2021 marks 30 years since the establishment of the Australian Jewish Genealogical Society. Like all good family legends, the genesis story of AJGS is one with many versions.
Both Sophie Kaplan and I chatted about it a long time ago. 30 years ago, we were both members of the Australian Jewish Historical Society. She knew I was connected with research into history, number one, and our family history, number two, because I was also a member of the Society of Australian Genealogists.
I started researching my family tree because one of my cousins, Harry Shaw, he'd drawn up a basic family tree. So I took over that and I started extending it and doing some more research. Went to a couple of talks by Sophie. I started badgering her to form a society, which she finally did.
My recollection is that David Gross was the person who had the initial idea.
I remember starting to do my family tree early in 1991, and I decided at some point that I needed to find further materials and other ways of researching. So I decided to advertise in the Jewish News about starting a Jewish Genealogical Society, of which I got a few responses from. One of the responses was from someone called Stuart, who we become kind of acquaintances through the society, and the other was from Sophie Kaplan. I recall her ringing me saying, or something along the lines of, how dare I start an organization without talking to her first? And I said to her, well, I didn't know who you were. So basically we calmed the situation down and the society started.
And within a short time, there was obviously David Gross, Sophie, and Ricky Nash.
In November 1991, the first Australian Jewish Genealogical Society was formally founded, and its committee was Sophie Kaplan, President, Ricky Nash, Vice President, Terry Newman, Secretary, Stuart Shaw, Treasurer, David Lander, Committee, David Laufer, Committee, Nigel Meinrath, Committee.
I volunteered to be Treasurer, which I worked at for 6 years.
Well, it was just about the time I discovered in 91 that I had Jewish ancestors. Prior to that, I had no idea. My great-great-grandfather was Joshua Lyons, who was Jewish from London, and his parents were from Poland. And at that time, I saw an advertisement somewhere about this new society that was being formed for the research of Jewish ancestors. So I joined up. At that stage, Sophie Kaplan was the president.
Sophie contacted me and several other people and invited me and all these other people to come to a meeting at her place.
Some of the early meetings were at Sophie's place in Castle Crag, and some of them were at the shul, where they're still held.
The meetings were very long.
Once we started the meetings, they didn't finish until maybe 1 o'clock in the morning.
I've never been to the meeting of the Jewish Genealogical Society, but I've kept in touch through getting the Kosher Koala, which I always read.
We got introduced to other new people who were coming along. I met people like Gary Luke, who seemed to be a good source of information and a source of materials.
I set up the first of the Society's website with various resources and the meeting times. 2004, I think. I thought, we don't have a forum like the special interest groups on Jewish Gen for Australian Jewish genealogy. I'd set it up on Yahoo. There's not much goes on, but when anyone does put a question, almost immediately there's such good answers come up. But in earlier times, there was a lot more going on there really constantly.
I enjoyed going to meetings. You had the opportunity of helping some of the people who hardly knew anything.
The specialist knowledge of particular individuals where they'd researched their own family, but in getting to know that, they'd also probed pretty deeply into say German records or Polish or whatever others. And the sharing of that knowledge was really great.
But what I got from the society, I suppose, was encouragement to keep going. These people were interested in this.
The range of resources that the society was bringing into the country. So there was this rare collection.
The AJGS began to connect with overseas genealogical societies. A strong connection was with New York, where Sally Ann Sack was president. Also, Gary Mokotov's Avatena, the International Review of Jewish Genealogy, was subscribed and obtained. It provided amazing research articles from worldwide societies and individuals.
And there wasn't so much available on the internet back then either. I mean, the internet was very new. You couldn't go in there and search for the Mormon records, for instance. You had to actually go into, let's say, the church in Greenwich.
You go through an index, you order films. Several months later, the films arrive.
Microfilm. Yeah, there's microfilm, you little microfish, they call them. People say, where are you going? I say, I'm going down to do some microfishing.
And then you start scrolling through them, and you have a period of about 3 weeks to scroll through them. And so I used to scroll through films, and I used to write down on a notebook every time I saw a familiar surname.
I can remember the first time in about 1998, 1999, I went into the Family Search Centre in the city in Sydney and asked about Ukrainian records, and they looked at me as if I'd come from Mars. But there's certainly a lot of technology has enabled. There are so many databases where the actual original records are now online, and you can go and extract them, put them up on ViewMate and get somebody to translate them, and away you go. Whereas before it was a slow process of writing to the archive, asking them, did they have the records? They would write back to you. You would get that translated, you would forward some money, then they would post it to you. It took months, and it often was really unsuccessful and cost a lot of money. I think when AJGS started, there was a real need for collaborative research, both in terms of sharing what little expertise existed, because it was a whole new area, and B, financially, so that people could get together and, if they had an area of common interest, hire a single researcher to go and get a dozen certificates, or to investigate a particular cemetery or a particular archive to see what was there. I think it's different now because there's so many resources, there's so many more researchers, there's so much more available online.
Zoom gave us an amazing opportunity to reach out to our members, feel like we were in their lounge rooms together, invite people who were interstate, overseas, in other cities to join us for the meetings that we had. It's also nice when we're able to get online together when helping people to be able to share that face-to-face experience, share screens together, and really help in a way that we haven't been able to in the past unless we were sitting together in the library at Linfield. My vision for the future of the society is evolving as each day is evolving. I think what we have discovered is that Zoom and being able to do things online is certainly a wonderful way to proceed. Do I know completely how this is going to happen? No. But I do know that the work that we've done the last year behind the scenes of putting all our library books so that you know what's in our library, putting all our kosher koala copies of 29 years up online, so that you can now have a search field to be able to find anything you want in past copies, has been a wonderful achievement by the committee that has served. During this next year, we will look at other things that we can do to help people with their research by putting things together online and pointing them in the direction. We will always be there to help people with their research and finding their Jewish heritage.